Hello, online pipe community. Ethan, Parsimonious Piper here. Today we have another Morsels for Mental Manducation, continuing into C.S. Lewis, Mere Christianity. First, in a 2-star Pipe by Lee Bulldog, I have another bowl of that Former's Private Flake, which we'll talk about more tomorrow. Let's jump in. So today we are going to dive into the first of Lewis' 3 divisions of morality, and that is human-to-human interactions. Now, for Christians, this can be boiled down into two teachings. One is what we call the greatest and second greatest commandments. First, to love God with everything you have, and second, to love your neighbor as yourself. And then the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. We don't have any problem agreeing with these things. What we do have trouble with is how to put them into practice. You see, these principles, these commandments, are not a political program. And so their application may very well look very different across different times, places, and cultures. Now, Jesus himself tells us that we are to take care of the poor, specifically widows and orphans. In other words, people who at that time, and in our day as well, very often cannot provide for themselves. That those in fact are a priority. Taken to its extreme, this can become and look very socialist. But Paul tells us that those who don't work shouldn't eat. And that can be taken to the other extreme. One of the main problems that we have here, and Lewis points out that he's guilty of it. I know I am. I have to be very cautious and wary, is that we often approach Scripture with the intent of finding things that support our own pre-held beliefs, instead of looking to Scripture to find out what those beliefs should be. Again, this is not it's not a political program. And in fact, the solution to this moral dilemma of how to obey these 2 commands isn't political at all. What it requires is for the church to step up to the plate. We often, however, see the church as priests, ministers, deacons, etc., those who are employed by and visible in the church to the outside world, at least. But the truth is, the church is each and every one of us. This job does not belong to the clergy or the ruling class in the church, the directing, guiding, leading class. It's the responsibility of each and every one of us. And this is where the church falls far short, in that we are called to use the abilities that God gives us, not merely for our own benefit, but for the benefit of others. Now, Lewis does make one point as a side note, with which I disagree, and that is that he decries capitalism, which he defines as lending with interest, and shows 3 different cultures in which that was considered a bad thing, including, at times, the Jewish culture. However, Scripture is not against lending with interest. Scripture is against usury. which is lending with exorbitant interest, an interest that cannot reasonably be repaid. In fact, Jesus himself, in telling the parable of the lazy or wicked servant, says that servant would have been better off, instead of just burying what he was given by his master, to have placed it in a bank where he would have at least drawn interest. That means that couldn't have been an evil thing. So this is not, and should not be, a political debate. We make it one. Politics and government is about what is required and what is forced on the individual. Christians in particular should not be, whether they are from the left or the right, should not be trying to use political leverage to force other people to behave by their moral standards. That's not what we're called here to. We are called to doing this ourselves. In a nutshell, if I'm going to do unto others as I would like to be done, that first means I've got to be able to learn to really love my neighbor as I love myself. But in order for me to do that, I'm going to have to be able to love God with everything that I have. And that's actually subordinate. The second commandment there, to love your neighbor as yourself, is subordinate, and I would say even predicated on being able to love God first. Now, what does Jesus tell us that looks like? John 14, Jesus tells us that if we love him, we'll keep his commandments. Didn't dry this out. Yes, that if we love him, we'll keep his commandments. And in fact, that's how we will be able to demonstrate our love for God, is that we obey him. That's not something we can push off onto other people. It's something we need to worry about for ourselves. And that will lead us right into the very next of Lewis' 3 divisions of morality. With that, light something you like. Hopefully it'll stay lit. Enjoy your afternoon.